guys, welcome back. Byte Brian back once again for another podcast, and I guess we'll call this one Marchuary since I kind of missed my February podcast. But anyway, I got a lot of stuff to get into. A lot of questions from you guys, from the fans. So we're going to be talking about some issues with the Nintendo Switch, a little bit of Gamestop, a little bit of WWE, and a little bit of Q&A from you guys. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so first let's talk about the Nintendo Switch. With the release of the Nintendo Switch, I've heard a lot of complaints, and this one comes from John Gass, hope I'm pronouncing that right, asking about what I thought about the difference in the hard drive space on the Nintendo Switch, which is only about 25.9 gigabytes available to users as far as the Switch games, like downloads or the actual physical copies of the game. Now, right off the bat, everybody, of course, is grabbing up copies of Breath of the Wild faster before they can even hit store shelves. Although I have noticed that Wii U sales have probably been a little bit higher than the Switch sales for Breath of the Wild. Now, the file size for Breath of the Wild is over 13.4 gigabytes. That's insane. That takes up over half of your space for just one game. So that's going to be really annoying when you want to, get a new game once they finally start releasing, the new Dragon Age or Splatoon. Some of those titles are 5 gigs each. So if you want to have any decent titles at all on your system, you can only have like 3 or 4 games before you have to start deleting the space on your hard drive. And God forbid any other apps like YouTube or Netflix or your Facebook or anything that you bought from the digital shop, and seeing how that works out. So overall, I probably think Nintendo is going to release a second system. You'll probably see an upgraded system to where you can get a Switch later down the road, maybe like, a 250 gig drive or something like that. I mean, I would really hope so, or that is a huge, huge, huge mistake by Nintendo's part. So, not only are you limiting yourself right off the bat with third-party games and support, but you're limiting yourself in the fact that you don't have enough games, and then the games that you do have are just going to frustrate people because, you're not always just going to play one game all the time. Like, sure, with Breath of the Wild, you're going to be playing that for a long time, but say Splatoon comes out, the new Mario universe, and Breath of the Wild. Why wouldn't you want to have all those games installed so you can just pop them in and be ready to play them whenever? Or say you don't want to buy the physical copies. What if you only want to buy the digital copies because you don't like physical for whatever reason? You don't want to, have cases and things laying around, or maybe you're afraid that you're going to lose it. So you can barely, keep any games on your hard drive. So I don't know if they're going to do any type of cloud storage for that, which would probably be a smart idea. But I really hope it's an issue that Nintendo looks into and comes up with a good solution, for consumers pretty quickly. All right, and this next question comes from a good friend of mine at the Hibiki TMD, asking me in general what I thought about the Nintendo Wii as a system. Now, overall, I remember when the Nintendo Wii came out after the GameCube in, I think it was 2005, 2006. I was intrigued because at that point, I was in my middle 20s and I really hadn't been playing GameCube or too much Nintendo stuff in a while. So this was the first video game system I saw by Nintendo as an adult. And I didn't really know what to think of it. It was just very, very strange. But I liked the concept. I thought looking at it, I was like, wow, this is really the wave of the future with technology, that you can kind of become one with your games with the motion controls and things like that. And I was really interested with that. I remember playing that over my friends' house when we would have parties, and everybody played the Wii Sports games, playing baseball and stuff like that. And it was really cool. it was almost like a virtual reality experience. So, I think that it succeeded in that area where it got so many more people into gaming that never would have gotten into it before. It was simple enough for a little kid to be able to pick it up and, you know, play any number of games from, Link's Crossbow to, the Wii Party or Mario Party games and things like that, to old people, playing bowling and stuff like that. So it really made Nintendo more of a household name than ever before, which, a lot of people probably are like, wow, is that possible? Everybody knew Nintendo, but, excuse me, after that point, you would always have people going into stores and stuff, and even if they didn't know what they were looking for, they would go to, say, buy an Xbox or a PS3. And because of the Wii, and because of so many people playing it, everybody started saying, oh, I want a Nintendo, I want a Mario. So a video game console became synonymous again, like it did in 1985, with one word, with Nintendo. And that was a huge, global marketing strategy to where it just became an immediate household name around the world. Now, overall, I think that the Wii, it has its good and its bad to it. There's a lot of good games like Xenoblade Chronicles and Pandora's Tower. Um, the Metroid games were okay. Skyward Sword, I'm not a huge fan of, but it was average at best. Um, but I think that there were just too many titles put out for it. The Nintendo Wii kind of became the PS2 of the Nintendo line, to where there were just so many, many games, like over 1,000 games released for the Wii, and there was such little quality, with titles like Chicken Shoot and, just any motion crap like the Nerf games, the Hot Wheels games, the Ben 10 games, and just anybody and everybody jumped on the Nintendo Wii bandwagon to where you'd see it, little Asian dollar stores, supermarkets. You couldn't move 3 feet without suddenly the store to where you go to buy, your milk at is also now a video game store, apparently. And that really annoyed me because the quality really suffered and really, really lacked. So I think that, the Nintendo Wii should have focused more on making some games really good with the motion controls, and they did that. Skyward Sword was good for that, but I mean, it does get tiring after a while, and your arms, you just don't want to play like that for 2 to 3 hours at a time. It's annoying. Metroid Prime and Echoes, I mean, you can't really fault the controls that much because they're just bad Metroid games, so you have to really fault it on the fact that it's just not a very good game to begin with. Uh, but I think that Nintendo should have made it more intuitive with going back to their roots of just a regular controller. And I know Nintendo's always been on the forefront of innovating new technology, but they should have made it easier to where, you didn't have to wirelessly hook up your Wiimote to have a Wii Pro controller hooked up in order to use a regular controller, because that's annoying, because the batteries would go dead, the sensor bar wouldn't pick it up, it would disconnect all the time. So when you wanted to play a regular game, like say if you had Super Mario Brothers or the original Zelda downloaded from your from the Wii store, it made it really cumbersome. And the fact that it made DVDs hard to play, which at that time, I mean, it should have been able to do easily without having to have an extension installed for it. It kind of showed its age in that regard, even when it came out. I did like the fact that it included backwards compatibility with hooking up GameCube controllers and being able to read GameCube discs. So, kudos to Nintendo for including that, and kudos to Nintendo for, including that with the Wii U, not with so much with the GameCube games, but with being able to I don't know if you can play GameCube games on the Wii U. Not sure about that. But the fact that you could at least have backwards compatibility with the Wii. So I'm glad that Nintendo did that. That was a good move in their direction. Overall, though, I think that the Nintendo Wii, for as big of a success as it was, and it was Nintendo's biggest success probably since the Super Nintendo, as far as a console launch, was monumental. But I think they needed to have a lot better quality control in the games and not just pump out anything and everything. And that's why you have enormous mammoth clearance um, bin racks and racks and racks of just terrible Wii games that nobody wants to play. And that's why you have to, go on YouTube and Google and hit top 50 Wii games, top 20 Wii games, because there's so much shit that you need to know, hey, what's actually decent to play? And there's not much out there. So that's unfortunate. Overall, I think that the Wii is a pretty good system, but I think that ironically, from back in the day when Nintendo was so strict about their seal of quality in the 80s, they kind of forgot that step when they let anybody put out a game for the Wii in the modern age. All right, now this next question comes from Tom Bomb Leprechaun. And this is about what areas of collecting are you interested in now? Where do you see your collection going? And, well, let's see. As far as what I'm into collecting right now, I would have to say it's Atari. For me, it's kind of always been Atari, and I think a lot of people are puzzled by that because, a lot of the games are really bad, the graphics and sound are really bad, but to me, I guess I feel kind of like an archaeologist or something when I go to game stores and go to flea markets because really rare Atari games, like one I just picked up recently, an Avalon Hill game. If you don't know who Avalon Hill is, they were a Sears-based board game division that also went into video games, and they didn't really make it very many, so they're pretty rare. Um, and I picked up this one called Death Trap that I recently picked up, and I also have another one called London Blitz, and they're really different because they have ridges on the sides of the game, and they look really different. But my point is that sure, you have your great stuff like Yar's Revenge and Miss Pac-Man and stuff like that, but you have the really, really weird stuff that, where, yeah, everything got its start with the Odyssey, and stuff like that, but there's nothing to collect for the Odyssey. You either have an Odyssey with all of the components, or you just don't have anything. The Pong systems are neat, and I don't really feel a need to collect them, aside from, like, maybe the original Atari Pong system. I think the designs look really neat. And the Telstar systems with like the revolver in the side and stuff like that, those are neat too. It really shows how gaming was trying to break new ground, almost 40 years ago now. But Atari is really really the grandfather of it all to where, these cartridges and these new designs and this new uncharted territory that was going somewhere where no other company could go before, where you weren't just playing checkers or pong or tennis or badminton, you were actually creating whole worlds. And while those worlds were terrible and maybe they didn't make a lot of sense, they set the framework and the groundwork for what was to come. So, to me, no Atari game is really bad because they were all doing something that no one had ever done before in the first place. So how can you really have a bad game? Because no one had ever even done that before. Aside from the arcade versions, as bad as Pac-Man was, how can you really have a bad version of Pac-Man when no other system was even able to play it yet? So to answer your question, Tom, Atari will probably be always my favorite system to collect. Aside from that, I like collecting 5 1/4 big floppy disk games, PC games. I think that's neat. I think just anything that's weird and forgotten about, it might not be popular, but it's cool, and I like researching the history of it. So that's where my collection's going now. I still collect a lot of NES stuff, but it's just hard because prices are astronomical. I mean, even good deals I get at flea markets are only, good deals within reason. A good deal is like getting Turtles in Time, for maybe $30 or $40, and it's like, man, I got a steal on that, like $40. And it's like, what do you mean? You got a steal? That's still expensive, but you go to a convention or anything like that, you're going to pay 50 to $60. So a bargain nowadays is really relative. All right, so now let's talk some WWE. Now, as many of you guys may have heard, in anticipation of the new WrestleMania right around the corner, Ravishing Rick Rude was just inducted into the class of 2017 Hall of Fame. Now, Rick Rude first made his appearance back in 1987, and he immediately became a success, getting on stage and booing at male audience members and chastising them about their fat guts and terrible physique and how they could never hope to look like the chiseled god that the Ravishing One looked like. He allowed women to bask in his glory and offered photo ops with them. And at WrestleMania, he even unthroned the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 5 to become the Intercontinental Champion. He feuded with Jake the Snake Roberts from time to time, and even got himself in trouble because maybe he was a little bit too ravishing with Rick's wife and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Rick had one of the most illustrious careers and was a great Intercontinental Champion throughout his career in WWE and when he moved on to WCW. Unfortunately, he untimely passed away in 1999, but now he will live on forever in the WWE Hall of Fame, and I have to say, none too soon. Alright, and lastly, let's talk a little bit about GameStop. I know, surprising, right? But I figured I had to bring this up because there's been so much conversation about the circle of life and about GameStop in general. Now, a little known secret, I used to be a manager for a GameStop location, but I won't say where. I used to manage a GameStop, and I always heard so much flack from people about how underhanded and sneaky employees were, and, how we were just there to make a buck and lie to customers, and just, do whatever we had to do just to make sales. And I gotta say, that's honestly not true. When I worked at GameStop, I was honest with people. Sure, we had to push reserves and pro cards and things like that, but I always made sure that I let them know that they were getting a good value. And with customers that would come in who were regular customers, me being, a gamer, a nerd, a geek, a dork, whatever you want to call it, I would have conversations with these people and really earn their trust because I really liked what I did and had fun working there. So I wouldn't just push a reserve on someone just because it was what we were doing. If they genuinely liked Battlefield or sports games or Gears of War or, God of War or Fallout, I would recommend that based on their history. I did, however, have a problem with a little bit of our initiative to where they always pushed the pre-owned sales. Now, my job was never threatened, and I was never told that I would be fired if I didn't do it, but I always felt like there was a second set of eyes watching over my numbers, and if I didn't hit those numbers consistently, that my job could have been in jeopardy. Thankfully, though, I think that my honesty paid for itself because I naturally usually had good numbers and didn't really have to worry about that thing too much from time to time. But overall, I think that GameStop has gotten itself into a bad spot where people just can't trust their local game store anymore. You have to remember, this all started out years ago in the early to mid 90s as Funko Land, and before that when you just had your local video game store. And these were places that you trusted. They were mom and pop stores, or it was just, the bright rainbow colored Funko Land video game store around the corner. And you brought in your games and your treasure trove and wanted to know, hey man, what am I going to get for all this stuff so I can walk out of here with a new game? That was the point of it back then. You were never asked to reserve or pre-order anything. They had a board where they would tell you when new games were coming out, but there was no pressure. You just wanted to come in and buy a new video game. And I think somewhere along the way, GameStop got lost in all that. After they transitioned to EB Games and, Software Boutique and finally became GameStop, they forgot about what they really got in the business for in the first place and got too focused on the bottom line. I think GameStop needs to go back to its roots, and I'm glad that they started to change the Circle of Life program to where associates don't have to feel like their job is in jeopardy and that they'd have to lie to customers just to make a sale without worrying about providing the best customer service they can to the gamer and making sure that at the end of the day they're going to go home and enjoy the game that they want to play. That's the initiative that GameStop really needs to be focusing on. Not all these pop figures and all their sales numbers. Overall, I think GameStop can still be a solid cornerstone of the gaming industry again. I want to see it as a place where you can go in and you can trade in your retro games and realize, hey, I'm getting a fair value for what I'm trading in. And you want to play what's coming out. You don't want to be talked into a phone contract or a tablet. That doesn't make any sense. That's not why you're there. So I hope that GameStop eventually will come full circle and realize how big of a part of the gaming industry they are, and realize how much people still rely on them and want them to be around for years to come. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for this month's podcast, and I will see you next month for another 8Byte Podcast. Take care.
Hey guys, if you like the video that you just watched, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And if you do the Facebook and Twitter thing, follow me at #KingOfRetro. See you next time.